Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Big Moves, Bigger Conversations. And if you guys are tuned in and only listening to the audio and not able to see the recording, I am actually cheesing with all of my teeth because I'm really excited. Today we have the Michael Griffin, which I'll affectionately call him Griff because in college, that's what we called him, Mike or Griff. And I am just excited to have this dialogue. Mike, it's been a really long time since we've had a live discussion. A lot of our interactions over the last couple of years since graduating have been via social media. And so, just like with my audience, I'm sort of getting a real time update. Before we get into your background, I want to say my impression of Mike. So, Mike, back in college, you were like the epitome of who is most likely to be the next CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It was Mike Griff. Mike Griff has always been really polished, so it is not lost on me that he is now all about well-being and fitness and being your best self, because it just naturally is who he is. And so I'm really excited about today's conversation. And with that, Mike, over to you.
Sasha, I'm so excited to be here today. Let me just say that up front. And I'm really happy to share my story. In a sense, it's kind of like an exclusive because a lot has gone on and changed over the past, decade or so. And so this is the first time that I'm actually really telling my story. And so I'm just super excited to be here. And thank you for that introduction. As you mentioned, college was definitely a grind. And I did a lot to essentially set myself up to enter into the corporate world. So right after college, as you might remember, I went intern at Google.
Yep, you were a Googler.
Yeah, was a Googler, and then they hired me back full time, and so I went back to Google for 8.5 years.
Wow.
And right in the middle of the pandemic, I continued my tech crawl. I left and I went to Reddit, and I worked there doing essentially advertising. And it was really, really cool, great fun company. And then I encountered a shift that was actually building. And so I'm excited to kind of talk to you about that shift today and how I essentially ended up transitioning into where I am now, being a business owner. I currently am the founder and CEO of Evalastra. And I also, I'm a fitness instructor. So I do spin and so many other things that I'm extremely passionate about. So really looking forward to sharing more about that today.
Love that. And go back to Mike Griff umpteenth years ago. What was your dreams? What was like your goal? You were, in fact, at one point, I thought you were like the only Google intern at A&T. And so you were like helping with that foundational sort of building that pipeline from A&T. Listen, Mike Griff was the day in the life of a tech guy before it became sexy and all over TikTok and Instagram. And so, Mike, take us back to that time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. So I majored in economics, and I thought that my dream actually at the time was to go work on Wall Street. I wanted to go to like Goldman Sachs. I wanted to work for a big bank. I wanted to do finance. And I actually joined a program called MLT. Shout out to MLT. And MLT was so incredibly helpful in actually really guiding me on my corporate journey. And I was doing MLT. Meanwhile, I was networking in undergrad, and a friend of a friend actually was able to connect me with someone at Google. And at the time, they didn't have many HBCU partnerships. And so they were looking to essentially establish more partnerships with HBCUs. And so I was one of the point of contacts that they got in touch with first. My entire attitude around finance changed. I wanted to really work at a tech company because I saw how fun it was. There was, undergrad was a grind. I was doing a lot, and I wanted to work in a place where I could actually be myself and that was seemingly more relaxed.
I don't want to gloss over it. MLT is extremely competitive program.
Management Leadership for Tomorrow.
Which focuses on people of color, helping them progress and build up those foundational like professional development and extending your network. And Mike, again, is being a little bit humble in how much he networked. So he was in the business department. I was in the business department as well as an accounting undergrad student. And anytime there was anything happening on campus, Mike Griff was present. I recall showing up Like if you had to give, if we're thinking about some of the more junior folks that are watching this, what is some of that insight you would provide them where you were intentional about the rooms you were in, the folks that you were networking in? Take us back to that time. Like what were some of your guiding principles during undergrad?
Yes. So two things. Networking is one letter away from not working, and you have to network to get work, right? And I think that really applies, even though I'm not in the corporate space anymore. I think that applies even as an entrepreneur, that applies anywhere because you really have to fight for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. And so that's something that I always adopted. And so I thought it was really important, even though it was sometimes uncomfortable to be at those fairs and, being at all of those networking events. I really wanted to push myself because I had a really, really strong goal. And my focus was highly centered on personal success. And so, yes, it was critical actually putting myself in those rooms, in those spaces.
And from a personal success like standpoint, 5 years removed from college, or even now 10 plus years removed from college, do you feel like you've hit those marks?
Absolutely. I really do. And again, my focus has shifted. So I feel like I'm now at a point where I'm having to kind of rebalance and reintegrate some of those things.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I did. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of
Good.
myself and I'm proud of the work that I did. Absolutely.
Good. And I don't want to focus too much on the past, but I think it's from a just understanding who you are and the shift.
Yes.
I think it is important. But now I do want to get to that pivot. A lot of times we talk about, at least from a corporate perspective, climbing the corporate ladder. And you at some point shifted, right?
Yes.
Did you find that the shift happened because of COVID? Was it a personal experience? Did you hit a wall and realize, like, am I really happy? Because I do want, like, from the podcast, I want it to be a point of reflection, right? As we're aging and having more life experiences, I feel like we're all sort of in that place of finding ourselves. And so, from our more junior folks, it is exciting for them to hear, if you don't have it all together when you're coming out of college, like that's okay. But then for the folks who are in their mid 30s and entering that next phase of life, like we're all trying to figure it out. And so walk us through your journey.
Yes. And there are so many pieces. So I'm going to try my best to really, give you the full picture and the full story. So I got my dream job right out of college, right? And I did so much.
Dream job and it being a known company, money, you were
Yes.
you okay.
I grew up in High Point, North Carolina. And, when I got the offer, I moved to California without even thinking about it.
So an attractive city, a coin, and being able to be like the representation for your HBCU. Like these are all really exciting and things that we kind of check the box and say, oh, this is what success looks like post grad. You were, in a sense, the ideal candidate. And when you went back to North Carolina A&T, like you spoke to the students and said, hey, success is networking. Success is like all of these things. And so
Mhm.
I don't want to take away from the fact that like you were not only influential to the folks that were still there, but you were doing it from a place of like, just get in the room, you know? And
Yeah.
so that's where we started.
Yes. And so, it's interesting because one thing, and I'll tell to the younger audience, like when you graduate from college and let's say you relocate to a different area, you're going to be tasked with, entering, let's say you go into corporate, you're going to be tasked with entering the corporate space, but you're also going to be tasked with coming into adulthood and learning more about yourself as an individual, like, right? And so it's funny. I feel like I had the luxury of kind of being faced with various issues that put me in a place where I was able to grow and to develop myself, all while like having this career. So I was going through I was going through a lot of challenges, like, right? So moving from High Point, North Carolina, relocated in a completely different area, being in the Bay, and just trying to figure life out. I was trying to find a balance. I had a relationship that I was in, which I'm going to be very, very transparent about that ended in 2017. And that's another thing that you might discover that you face. You might be in a relationship that's not good, right? Or that is challenging, or that's really taxing on your energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at that time, it was in 2017 when I started to really focus on meditation and understanding how can I really, really bring myself back into balance? Because sometimes, people can get you really out of your character, and, you have to figure out how to manage yourself and your energy. And there was a girl on my team at Google. That's another thing. I have to be really, really grateful for Google because one of the great things about working there was the talent and the
Yeah.
sheer quality of people
Yeah.
that were there. Just exceptional people all
Yeah.
around. And I really, really appreciate it. But one girl on my team pulled me aside. She was basically doing a meditation program with the Isha Foundation that's ran by Sadhguru. And so she pulled me aside. She was like, Michael, she was like, I'm shifting into a place where I'm starting to get more into like meditation, and this is really my passion. I want to really introduce you to it. And at the time, Sadhguru was actually coming out to the South Bay. And so I went to go see him, not knowing that he was coming to Google the next day. I went to go see him 2 days in a row.
Mm.
And he taught meditation methods at scale. And I sat in that room with him, and something really, really like his methods really, really did stick with me. And over time, I started to incorporate them in my life, and I really noticed how my life started to change. Again, this was in 2017.
So how many years were you removed from college, from undergrad at this point?
At this point, I was about 5 years out
5
of
years.
undergrad.
Okay. Okay.
And so fast forward again, over the next few years, I
Mhm.
continued to, develop my meditation practice, build my meditation practice. And again, it started helping me in my life. And so right at COVID put me in a place, it was really, really interesting for a lot of people because believe it or not, as bad as it was, and it was really, really horrible. It put a lot of people in a place, including myself, where you had to kind of sit with yourself
Yeah.
and really evaluate, okay, where am I?
Yes.
And for me, it was who am I? Like, right? And why have I decided to embark on the journey that I've gone on? Right. And so for me, I grew up in a very, very like economically challenged situation environment. And so a lot of my life was centered around survival and
Mhm.
making it. And that's why I
Mhm.
had so much hustle. That's
Mhm.
why I had so much grit. And that's why I was really, really serious because for me, being poor actually was not an option for me. I was just like, I can't do this. It didn't really sit well with me. It was very unbecoming of me. And I felt that inside.
Mhm.
And so a lot of what I did for myself was essentially for the sake of survival and really putting myself in a better position. Furthermore, I also realized I really wanted to make my mom happy, right? And so sometimes we do these different things. We do things in our life that aren't necessarily in alignment with who we are. We're trying to maybe make it out of a certain
Yeah.
situation. Maybe we're trying to make our family or friends, we're trying to make them happy, right? I started in the pandemic, I really, really started to do a lot more inner work to really understand. In the absence of survival, because at that point, I've been working in corporate for, seven almost, and I felt very, very comfortable and I started to evaluate like being here in the absence of, let's say you had all the resources available to you in your life. Let's
Mhm.
say you had infinite resources, infinite money.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
What would you be doing with your life?
Yeah. These were the questions that you were asking
Yes.
yourself at that time.
Yes, your
Yeah.
questions are your keys, right?
Yeah.
So I was asking myself various questions like if I had infinite money, I'm comfortable now, but like if I had infinite resources, what would I be doing?
How did you start to think through these questions?
Yeah. So because I was in a place of learning meditation,
Mhm.
doing the inner work,
Mhm.
this was all self-guided. I
Oh
sat in
my
my
gosh.
living room. I sat through my in my living room and worked through these questions and these
Okay.
issues. And so your questions are your keys.
Mhm.
So I always tell people that. And that's one thing that I was taught. But asking myself these questions really put me into a place where I started to reevaluate my entire life. And so I realized that one thing that was really important for me was actually helping others and bringing out the best in other people. Even at work, sometimes you'll find that at work you'll take on at Google, a lot of tech companies, you can actually have a 5% project, a 20% project. A lot of my side projects, a lot of things that I was doing was actually helping other people. It was coaching, it was mentoring, like, right? So you can see like what your passions are about, like, right?
Yeah.
When you start to take on these little side things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I knew that that was something that I had to incorporate in my life. I knew that helping other people was something that I wanted to do. So I'll stick a pin there because the story kind of goes on.
Kind of sum up some of the things that at least I heard. So as you are taking on some of life's challenges or battles, you were still going. And I really want to sort of double down on that point because a lot of times people can get stopped, right? It can feel like you're hitting a brick wall when things aren't laid out as you have envisioned them. And so, Mike, I am super proud of you. I know your mom, it would have been or is, all of these things. I didn't know you came from humble beginnings, right? Like I didn't know that aspect of your story. So I do appreciate you sharing it. But I also think like the other side of that is you operating in a place of this is not really who I am. This is what I'm trying to be. And so I'm putting all of this extra effort into trying to be this version of what I thought I, wanted to do. But in reality, who was creating that? It wasn't you. And so I love that you were willing to do the work. And when you highlighted, like you moved, one of the things that I consistently heard from recruiters is at A&T was the challenge to get folks to move out of North Carolina when you had the ability to have opportunity or someone saying like just take the internship, it's a couple of months, people would say no. And so that was huge. You went to the West Coast, and then as you're in another place, you're dealing with life challenges. You're a high income earner for your age, you're setting the standard for the rest of your family is viewing you as successful, I'm sure you're helping them in some capacity, all
Yes.
while still trying to figure out what am I doing next, right? All while still managing this image of I have to keep progressing. And
I have
so,
to. That's what I thought.
like I heard all of it and I want to make sure you guys get it too. Like this is exceptional in the fact that you still in doing all these things, in checking what look like those boxes of social expectations, you still were willing to sit with yourself and say, but what else do I need? And so I want to go and really focus in on your time during COVID. You did this self learning where you sat down and you said, what do I want for myself? Love that. I think in my 30s, that is a lot of what I'm doing now is trying to figure out, Tasha, what makes you happy? Like, what is that thing that like you're like, I really want to do this. And that was the genesis of this podcast. I really enjoy getting to know other people and listening to their stories and like being able to say, oh my gosh, like we literally are living, we have shared experiences, but the question becomes, are people willing to share that? And
Right.
so I want to like, we all lived through COVID, but what was your experience during COVID as you were doing this, sort of coming into this place of awareness?
There was a lot of solitude, right? I was by myself, living by myself. So which I'm not used to. I'm used to actually going, being social, being a socialite and going out and doing all the things. Being a fitness fanatic, I used to ride a Soul Cycle every day, you know, going to classes. So a lot of that kind of came to a halt. And so I developed my own kind of like schedule, different things that I wanted to do. And I was doing all kinds of things. I think one of the really cool things that I started to do, and this is just an interesting aside, it was like genealogy and starting to really figure out like, okay, I don't think at the time I even knew like my great great grandparents. Got on Ancestry. I had done a couple of like done some like DNA testing,
Mhm.
and I started to dig for generations and generations to see like who are my ancestors, my
Yeah,
maternal,
your lineage.
what did they do, and who were they? What were their stories? Because sometimes the stories really get lost. Sometimes we have no clue.
Right.
And so I think there's power in that because you start to see the people that came before you that set the tone for you to be you.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really powerful. And so having that connection with them and just continuing my meditation practice. Again, I keep saying that like I read immensely. I read so much. And again, like all these different things were helping me to really get more of a deeper foundation on myself. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was really, really working on minimizing, not dissolving completely, but minimizing the ego.
Mm,
Because a lot of us our egos are very expansive. And when your ego is expansive, you think that you need more than you need. you're trying to keep up with an image that requires a lot of
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
That you might make choices or decisions that aren't necessarily good for you.
Yeah.
And so that's a process that I was really, really embarking on.
And I want to go back to a point that you highlighted around the uncomfortableness around your solitude. What were some of those initial, like, why was it a challenge to sit in solitude for you?
It was a challenge because it was a challenge sitting in solitude because I was so used to being around people and surrounded by people. Like, right, yeah, lots of friends, lots of social circles that I was a part of. And so I realized like some of those things kind of take you away from focusing on who you are, right? It's like I eventually came to see that. Not to say you shouldn't have friends. We need community now more than
Yes,
ever.
friends.
Now than ever, you need to have friends and a community like
Yeah.
around you to support you
Yeah.
during these times. However, it is important to be able to take a step back so that you can see yourself. And a lot of us, we're so busy. Life is designed to be so busy that a lot of us aren't having the opportunity to focus on, to go within and to see ourselves as we are.
So we've talked, I think we have like a really good build up for where you were, what your mindset is. We're talking through this shift. We're now out of COVID. Talk about that pivotal point where you were like, I'm ready. Like, was it a drastic shift where you said you woke up one morning, you were like, I'm done with corporate, and you went right into your wellness and doing all, like, tell us that aspect of your
No,
story.
no, I did make the switch to Reddit. So all of this empowerment was like, you know what? You can leave Google
Yes. Okay.
because I thought that I wanted to work at Google forever. And there's still times when I'm like, should I go back to Google? Because Google was so incredible, like, right, in terms of like all the benefits, the amenities. People also treated me, I feel like people treated me differently because I worked there, like,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Yeah.
I was traveling in my job. I was always on a plane. Like, I was able to see the world and go different places. And so when you have these different things, you're like, I really, really can't. I don't want to give this up. And so again, by going within, working on dissolving or minimizing, dissolving the ego, I said, you know what? You actually can go work at another company. I wanted to go really take my energy, my talent to somewhere that was growing, that was at a
Mhm.
small stage. Reddit at the time was pre-IPO.
Okay.
So they had not had their initial, they were not a publicly traded company at the time. And I really wanted to go work somewhere that was trying to IPO. I wanted to feel like I was contributing towards that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, and also I did kind of I was able to do like an analysis by looking at their platform. I want to work for a place that has a really, really good mission.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of important to have some sort of integrity and that you work for a place that aligns with where you're going, what you're trying to do. Reddit's mission is to a sense of community and belonging for everyone. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
And so I know that they had a lot of growth potential. They were pre-IPO. They had an incredible mission, and I feel like I can make a great contribution there. And so I decided to make the switch. Right. And so that was really, really great for me. And I really enjoyed it. It was a great company. That said, I was still being faced with a few things in life.
Mhm.
So there were two things. I was going through a process that was very, very spiritual in nature, where I was being confronted with where I was in life and my purpose, and really evaluating and trying to understand, like, am I in alignment with my purpose? And am I in alignment with my destiny? Like, right, and what I'm supposed to do. Right. And so, not gonna lie, things were a little bit stressful.
Yeah.
And so I was navigating this kind of spiritual process. That was one thing that was going on. Number two, my mom was really becoming really ill.
Mm.
I got a call one day. It was from my dad. My dad was like, "Have you talked to your mom?" I'm like, "No, I haven't talked to her in a couple of days." He was like,
Mm.
you know, and then he sounded really, really like he sounded really. It was some. I knew that something was wrong by the tone of
Okay.
his voice. And so it turns out my mom was actually on a ventilator. She was in a hospital, and I dropped everything. I remember like literally grabbing a bag and going to the airport without even booking a flight home. Like,
Yeah.
I just got to Delta and I remember just bawling. I was
Mm.
crying. And so I got on the plane And I flew home, and I'll never forget, like, I got to the hospital and I saw her there. And I was just absolutely distraught, like, when I saw her like that. And so right then and there, it was like I already kind of knew that I needed to make a transition.
Yeah.
But I also seeing my parent, my mom like that, I knew that I needed to make a quick shift. And
Mm,
within the next few months, I quit my job
mm,
and I moved home. I literally quit my job. I remember praying. I
mm,
rooted myself in prayer. And I remember saying, if I make this shift, I don't want to want for anything.
mm.
And I think this was 3 years ago. And I've wanted for nothing.
Yeah, no. So, Mike, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I do remember when you moved back to North Carolina and that there were some challenges there. But what about it, if you're comfortable? Like, what about seeing your mom prompted the shift? Was
Yeah, so it was honestly, it was like the cherry on top, because I already knew that I needed to make a shift, but seeing
Yeah,
that was just like, this is kind of confirmation.
yeah,
And I was willing to take my energy. I wanted to take my energy home to support her,
okay,
you know. And yeah, it was like the cherry on top, because again, I knew that I already wanted to transition. I knew that I was being called to transition. I was too afraid to do it because I did
yeah,
not want to lose
yeah,
the comfort. I didn't want to lose the stability.
yeah,
But I knew that I would be supported no matter what
yeah.
I did. And so seeing her like that, I was like, you know what? I've been working in corporate for 10 years. I've been able to help companies grow and scale and make millions of dollars
For the companies.
for those companies that I've supported. Sometimes we can go to work and do things for other people, or just let's not even say work in life. Sometimes we can do things for other people, but do we do those things for ourselves? Can we
Right,
do those things for ourselves? Like, right. So I'm
right.
like, I have these skills. Surely I can do this for myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so I kind of knew that. But I want to go back to seeing my mom in that way. So my mom ended up having to go into like a facility. And I was like I was supporting her. Like,
Mhm.
right. And that was really, really challenging.
Yep.
And so my mom started to show signs of improvement. Like, right. And so that's when I ended up transitioning and I'm moving up north.
Now, one of the things that you're not highlighting, minimizing the ego.
Yes.
Socially, what were you hearing around you? What were some of those things that impacted your decisioning?
In terms of moving back home, I really forgot to mention though, because when I was living in SF, in addition to navigating having a sick parent, I was also still going through the changes of life.
Yep.
And one of the things that I ended up finding that was very, very effective in terms of calming my nervous system and bringing me back to baseline was sound therapy. It was sound therapy, like, right? So let's say I was feeling anxious, I was feeling uncomfortable. I was able to hire a sound therapist to work with me virtually to help me, right? And so it was so helpful for me. I was actually bringing a sound therapist on when I worked at Reddit to kind of help the employees, right? Because employee wellness is super, super big. So I saw myself bringing wellness to big groups. And so when I decided to make the shift to go back home, one of the things I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to start a business.
Okay.
I knew I
Okay.
wanted to start a business. I knew I wanted to learn sound therapy because it was so powerful. And I don't know many Black male sound therapists in the United States or
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
There are very few. And so understanding how effective this method was for me, understanding how effective meditation was for me, and being able to handle and manage all that I was being, all that I was facing,
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to do
Yeah.
that. And so that that kind of brought me to starting my own. That brought that not kind of.
Okay. And I definitely want to get in that because it sounds like that's like you kind of glowed up as soon as you said it.
Yes.
I think the underscore and what we're not like saying pointedly is that you were living life, but also being exposed to different things. And in that exposure, you were leaning in. I do think sometimes as Black people, we sometimes say, oh, that's not for us. right? And it sounds like you were willing to step into another level of maybe uncomfortableness, right? I'll tell you, the first time I heard anything about sound therapy was on Billions. So as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's on TV. I do think, again, when you have that foundation where I'm not going to say money isn't a concern, but you were doing well. And so you were able to lean into some of these other practices that supported your mental health. And post COVID, or even during COVID, like I want to underscore that was a big deal. Everyone was leaning in, and it was very sexy to talk about mental health at that time, right? Everyone wanted to become a different version of themselves because we recognize that in solitude sometimes we do poor practices. That was when we see numbers skyrocket, when we see drug abuse, and we seen, folks who were dealing with really hard times, the negative place or places that were, substance abuse. And so I think it's, huge. It's commendable that you said, instead of going that way, like I want to lean into this. And we did see an uptick in folks trying to figure out how do you create community in a virtual setting. What are some of the other practices? I heard so much about the Peloton and, all of these different, resources or communities. So that's awesome. So you're at this place now where you know that you want to start a business. It sounds like you're starting those, you're making those, taking those steps into starting your business. How did you know you were going down the right path? What was your faith journey?
My faith journey, I just felt that I was supported so strongly by beyond anything that transcends the material. I just felt highly supported. I felt like I had an army behind me. And I felt that no matter what I decided to do, I would be successful because that's how my entire life has been.
I actually
And
did
I feel like,
no, I was going to say I did another one of these series, and a lady said, I haven't failed.
yeah,
And when you start to put things into, doesn't mean that everything's always going right, but I haven't failed. And when you start, and that's something that I've been really focusing on, is like challenging myself to get out of a norm and really say, when's the last time you pushed yourself? And so I
yes,
do think a consistent theme, Mike, for you, at least from what I'm hearing, is that you've leaned into what we consider uncomfortable. You've
yeah.
challenged your own version or society's version of status quo. And you were willing to double down on yourself and really step out on faith and go down a path where you said, hey, I've seen my ability to help others progress or firms grow. Why not do it for myself?
And so there came a point where I realized my light isn't shining here.
Yeah.
Sometimes, location is everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes and I have a plant right beside me, so I'll give you an example. You can have the most beautiful plant in the world, but if you put it in the wrong environment, it's
It
not going
won't grow. Yeah. Yeah.
to. Also, I realized that I, and I still do, and I always will have a big mission to make an impact. I want to impact hundreds of thousands and millions of people,
Yeah.
right? And so, in order to be able to do that, I needed to relocate into a place that was more in alignment with who I am. Sometimes you actually have to ask that for yourself because we sometimes land in places. We might see an opportunity or things. We might land in a place that just isn't for us. And so I realized that. And so I had to have a talk with my mom, and it was really, really challenging to leave her. Um, but I had to make a shift because I knew that there was a higher calling and that I needed to be in the New York area.
Okay, so you've transitioned. So you started your business in North Carolina?
Yes.
Okay, so you started the business in North Carolina, you're shifting to New York, you're expanding. Talk about that journey. Like, did you have an existing network that you tapped into? Was it leaning back into some of that earlier corporate training where it was your network is your net worth? Like, talk to us how you were
Exactly.
able to expand.
Yes. So I had an existing network, but I had to build a network. It was very uncomfortable. But you're not, and as you mentioned earlier, like if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not growing comfortable, right? And I realized the West Coast, I mastered the West Coast style. West Coast style is very, very laid back, in my opinion. It's like kind of go with the flow. But the New York area is like you kind of have to hustle. You have to grind. And I'm like, I really, really appreciate about this place because I feel like in this stage of my life and the way that I want to build, I think that it's critically important for me to be here. Right. And that's one thing I really appreciate. But to answer your question, a lot of it really came back down to building and really inserting myself in places that were in alignment with meditation, in alignment with, personal growth and so on, and really starting to build out the different communities here and telling my story, really, which is also very important.
Okay, so now we're here and you're building your foundational footprint in New York. What is your business? Like talk us through where are you now? What's your business? Like educate the people.
Yes. So again, the name of my business is Evalastra. Evalastra. And I came up with that business name to essentially to convey the meaning of evolving to a higher place. It combines two words, evolving and astral.
Yes.
So evolving to a higher place, there's a calling for higher. And so in that, my again, my key offering is to bring out the best in other people and to bring out the best in groups. And I do that in various ways, mainly by using a lot of the things that I've learned, a lot of the tools that I've essentially acquired to transform my life, to transform the life of others. So my key offerings are sound therapy. Of course, I spent 2 years educating myself, training with a master sound therapist out in LA, Nikki Kuti. I trained under her for 2 years to learn how to do it. So it's sound therapy is number one, meditation coaching, and I also do accountability coaching. And so I have two strategies. It's B2C. So I work one-on-one with people to help them to transform their lives. And I also work with groups and organizations as well. So I do group therapy. So, and I'll tell you how it works. So, especially with sound therapy, there are two different ways that you can use. One is pure relaxation, calming the body. Let's say you're going through a breakup. You're all up, your emotions are all over the place. You're upset. You might feel really, really bad. I use sound to bring the body back to baseline.
Mm.
Let's say you're anxious at work. Work is crazy. You have performance evaluations coming up. Maybe things aren't going well with your manager. Maybe you're navigating a corporate dynamic. You can be all over the place.
Yeah.
My key is to use sound and the breath to bring people back to baseline.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is I offer an alternative to traditional talk therapy. So, let's say, I don't know if, I personally, I've had therapists before. I think it's good to have a therapist, somebody to talk through your life with.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can take a little bit of time
Yes.
to really get to the meat. You spend years.
Yes.
What I offer, I use sound to offer an accelerated. I get to the meat and potatoes of what's happening within 2 to 3 sessions. I'm able to give you a full picture of what's essentially happening in your life by just using sound in different various tools. So that's what I do with the one-on-one therapy. So it's pure like relaxation, but also I can tell you what's happening within your energy field to essentially influence how you're feeling and what might be going on in your life. And it's accelerated. So really, really powerful work. It was transformative for me. And again, I decided to learn it and essentially incorporate it into my business. And so, yeah.
Love that. What do you want more people, perhaps an emphasis on like Black men to understand and maybe prioritize when it comes to like mental health?
I feel like the mental body is one of the most neglected bodies sometimes, especially for Black men. And I think we have an obligation, especially because a lot of what we're facing is post-traumatic, post-trauma. Sometimes things that were passed down to us. We have such a cool opportunity to be the pioneer in our families. Again, I told you earlier about the ancestral work that I did. How cool would it be to be the first person to end the trauma and to not pass that on to further generations? We have the ability to do that, right? It just requires us to make the commitment and to just sit with ourselves and to understand that we can make a change, to be real with ourselves and honest. Because a lot of people some people think that, oh, I'm good, my life's happy, I don't need to, really address anything. Oh, everything's good. But if you really do sit down and you face the music, we all have certain things we can improve on, and it's really powerful, right? So it should be prioritized, and we should consider it an opportunity and a great thing to have the ability to have a strong mental body. You can have strong physical body. You can be strong emotionally. You want to be strong mentally as well. So it's a muscle, though. You gotta build it.
Understood. So, Mike, we've talked about your journey. You've walked us through really since college to where you are now. And it does seem like for the average person, like even as I'm hearing it, I'm kind of challenging myself in real time to think, Sasha, what can you do differently to lean in and like grow your mental health? And so, because you've talked about this journey over years and you're doing a little bit here and a little bit there to sort of build that mental component, what is one thing that we can do today to help us to get on a journey of really self-discovery? But what do you
Exactly.
think from your perspective in working with different people? What is step one?
I think a step one would be to just sit 3 minutes, either in the morning when you get up or at night before you fall asleep, to just sit, eyes closed, in stillness, and to just breathe, observing the breath. Also going to come up. You think when we thinking about what happened during the day or what's going to happen with your day, let those thoughts come. That's the one thing I often hear when I'm talking to someone about, but I can't really focus. My mind just goes everywhere. Let those thoughts come,
Okay. Okay.
because what you're going to realize is eventually, if you do that long enough, a thought will come to you and you'll be able to really see, like, my goodness, I'm realizing that the only reason why I'm in corporate America is because I really want to make my mom happy, and that because I was trying to escape poverty,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that I should probably be shifting and doing something else. You'll realize that eventually a thought will come that will help you to essentially transition out of a place that you might be in.
Yeah.
Right? So let the thoughts come.
Yeah.
But I'd say start with 3 minutes in stillness, just breathing, observing the breath, and taking it from there.
Okay.
It's a
So,
small commitment. It's
okay.
a very, very, very small commitment. 3 minutes.
It is. Even
Very,
when
yeah.
you're saying it, I'm thinking, when's the last time I've sat for 3 minutes? I'll be the first to sign up and say, I'm going to do my 3 minute pledge to sit in silence and really challenge myself for 21 days. No, I love it. I love it. So when people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed with this idea of sitting with themselves, maybe I'm on day 10 and I'm like, I don't think this is working. What should I do to like challenge myself to stay with it?
So I think your question, again, like I said, and I don't think I know, your questions are your keys.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in a place of discomfort, you have to ask yourself, well, why am I feeling this?
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Why
Yeah.
can't I stick with this? Why don't I want to continue?
Yeah.
You can't continue with this. Like, what was your expectation?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we have to, self-governance is so powerful when you can sit with yourself, again, like I did when I first started this journey, and kind of just ask, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Have the conversation. And I think that would be very, very powerful.
All right. So, viewers, you have your homework. It's very clear 3 minutes, 21 days. Report out. How do you feel? And it sounds like the more questions that come up, dig into them, right? Like, let's get, if Mike's journey hasn't showed you anything else, it's approaching and leaning into what feels or seems uncomfortable. And you can still thrive in this iteration of yourself by just continuing to lean into what may not feel right. I think you are extremely bold, Mike, to not only share your story, but to share it in a way where you're being intentional about really how you evolved. I do not look at you and think this is the same Griff that was running campus in his, suit. I think it is a refined version, and I appreciate you giving me your time, sharing your perspective. And if folks wanted to lean in and utilize your services, how do they get in contact with you?
Yes, thank you. So you can visit www.evolastra.com. My Instagram is Mike_Griff. Reach out, send me a note. I'm very responsive, and my business is linked there at Evolastra on Instagram as well. So you can check it out.
Perfect. Anything you want to leave the audience, anything from personal perspective, professional
Yes,
perspective,
yes, yes.
homeboy?
I actually do. And I'm so happy you asked that. I want to really leave the audience with the question that I asked earlier. And that was, again, your questions are your keys.
Yep.
So if you had infinite resources at your disposal, what would you do? What would you be doing? How would you be living your life? And then I want you to make a goal to start doing that. And even if it's in the smallest capacity, I want you to start doing that for yourself. That's it.
Love that. Mike, again, Griff, affectionately, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate all that tuned in. Until next time, talk soon. Thank you for watching another episode of Big Moves, Bigger Conversations. Like, subscribe. Thank you for watching another episode of Big Moves, Bigger Conversations. Like, subscribe.